Welcome, everyone, to Let's Talk Broncos, brought to you by Mile High Sports. I'm your host, Bree Maestas, joined as always by Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Sports, the LTB Podcast, Bree0322, JR Drafts, and Zach_Seegers. You can find all of Zach and Joey's excellent work on milehighsports.com, and you can listen to any of our previous episodes on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. And if Facebook or Instagram is your thing, you can find us there too. Joey and Zach, how are you both doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I had a good day. Great weekend. I went to Boondocks with the LTB crew, which was a blast. Zach got spun out on the go-karts, which was amazing to see.
I would have had you if Tori didn't spin me out.
No, I had that inside lane, man. Anyways, I passed him when I hit the lap because he was sideways on the cars. I threw up the deuces to Tyreek Hill, kept it moving. Bree and laser tag was funny because I was sitting on the top and she'd never noticed, so I would just like pop and then watch her run across to the other side, wondering who hit her, and then I hit her again and watch her run across. Boondocks is fun overall. Great time. Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Glad we finally Joey's undefeated streak in LTB events it's kind of ended with me beating you in putt-putt. So I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, what's your question?
My question is, are we considering those Boondocks games as individual or as a whole? Was that day just one event, or are we doing individual
events? Are the Olympics one event, or do they count the luge and ice skating differently?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the person that brings home the most gold medals, it's like the most impressive.
You were the winner of the night.
Joey's saying he's freaking Michael Phelps over here.
Yeah, but did I win an event? Yes.
You did win an event. Yeah.
I have to say, Zach, mini golfing with one hand while he has like the scope. He just couldn't care less, but somehow just crushed us. Cooked it. It was really impressive. I have to give him props for that. You're welcome. It's the last time it'll happen. So,
of course. Well, I'm glad I got one compliment in there. That's an outlier.
Yeah. I want to remind anybody who's watching on Twitter that you need to jump over to the YouTube stream, which is linked in the thread, so you can get your questions and comments highlighted on this screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications so you don't miss a minute of the show. I wanted to say we threw out a mailbag request to everyone over on the interwebs to go ahead and send us any questions that you had about upcoming training camp or just any burning questions that might have been out there. And we got an incredible response. So I just want to say thank you for everyone who sent in their questions. We have a ton to run through. I can't wait to discuss these with Zach and Joey. Gentlemen, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Frankie wanted to say, you say I won Olympic gold, not I won high jump gold.
But the point being I won gold. That's all I'm saying.
Want to say hi to Rich. He's in the chat. Hello, sir. And then Grandizer 12. Hello, everyone. How was your weekend? Hitting like button as I moderate my Eagles, guys. Cheers. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And everyone else in the chat stream, go ahead and like that feed as well. We'll go ahead and start with our first question of the evening. I just want to say we got some really good ones and we got some repeats. So Jason and Jolene over from Twitter, what will the wide receiver pecking order look like? I'm going to throw it over to Zach. Zach, do you want to take this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jason's was who will the number one wide receiver be too? And it's kind of part of the pecking order. If I'm doing it from like targets and receptions and everything, I think it's going to be Courtland Sutton and then a healthy drop off to 2 and the rest of them. I think there might be a good competition for who number 2 is. But I think Courtland Sutton's going to be well and away the number one guy. I think we're going to see back to 2019 Courtland Sutton. We have seen players at the receiver position, Cooper Kupp being a really prominent one that comes to mind, have a rough kind of season immediately back from the ACL. And then the year after, return to form. And of course, we've seen Cooper Kupp reach new heights. I don't think Courtland Sutton will, get an MVP vote, but I do think we can see him return to form, play at that really high level. And if you get 2019 Courtland Sutton, that's like the perfect receiver to pair with Russell Wilson. After that, I think it's like Patrick, Judy, just because of fit. Hamler, I think, is locked into that 4 spot. Washington locked into that 5 spot. And then there'll be a good battle for 6, but I think it ultimately goes to Cleveland, Tyree Cleveland, because he's already proven himself on special teams. And I am seeing more 2020 Tyree Cleveland rather than that weird 2020 season from him that was really disappointing. Looks like he's back to form. And yeah, I think he's a special athlete. I like his chances.
Okay, so for me, I'm kind of in the same ballpark. I think Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick may be pretty close, though. I really do. Tim Patrick, just the most consistent receiver on the Broncos through the years. The guy stays healthy. He's an Iron Man, as consistent as become. And why wouldn't I expect him to take a really big leap with a great quarterback? I do. I think if he was that good with subpar quarterback play with Russell Wilson, why couldn't he? And that's just where I stand. I think Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick are right there. I'm interested to see where Jerry Jeudy is in this. I think he'll be third, but who knows? With the amount of talent he has, he could finish 1 through 3, in my opinion. I have no idea. I think Jerry Jeudy is that talented. He just needs to, be more consistent. Maybe entering year 3, that is where he is. KJ Hamler is definitely your 4th. Washington, he's going to be your 5th. I think his spot is pretty solidified, being that he is going to be the punt returner and kick returner. After that, it's kind of a question mark for me. Zach has a better eye at it than I do, being able to see these guys. It wouldn't shock me just coming off of last year if it was Seth Williams, but maybe I'm wrong. Tyree Cleveland does make some sense there as well.
Do you guys think that there is a chance that Jeudy and Hamler could be closer in that battle than they maybe would have been last season, given there's a lot of question marks and variables surrounding how they both come into this next season?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, just because of the draft capital you put in Jeudy. If well, I guess
because it wasn't
that wasn't a Peyton pick, right? So,
no.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe KJ Hamler comes into training camp and is lighting it up, surpasses Jeudy. But when you put that draft capital, and that's a Broncos pick, first round pick, you're going to want the guy to pan out. So naturally, you're going to give him the more favorable outcome, even if it is close. And Jeudy is so talented. I think he kind of deserves that opportunity to prove that he is worth that pick. We saw him in college be that consistent route runner, separation guy that I think he can still be in the NFL. I really would think that he's going to have that 3rd spot.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm pretty confident in him having that 3rd spot. I think KJ Hamler is pretty locked into the 4th spot. But I could see, us looking at the stats at season end and them being, maybe very close, especially from like a yards and touchdown standpoint, and maybe Hamler not having as many catches, but more yards and touchdowns. If the Jeudy Russ connection is a little awkward, which I think is a reasonable forecast. And then KJ Hamler looks the part of a lot of guys that Russ has worked with for a long time. I can't remember his first name, but Moore was a guy in Seattle for a long time. That's like that little speedster, straight line speed guy. And Russ is awesome at throwing those beautiful rainbow deep balls right into the breadbasket for a big play. So I think there's like some reality where that ends up being the case, but I think it's pretty unlikely. Jeudy should be locked into that. I don't know. He'll be 2 or 3 for me. I think probably more likely 3.
Don't want to take any too much time in this direction, but I do want to point out Rich's comment. In my opinion, Patrick might have more TDs, Sutton likely to win yards. How do you guys feel about that? I kind of think that falls where I'm leaning as far as how those 2 top receivers pan out. You guys against that? And then what about Virgil? I know Rich is asking about him as well.
Maybe a practice squad guy. He didn't stand out to me in any direction during OTAs. I thought, again, Brandon Johnson, of like the players Broncos country won't be familiar with, Brandon Johnson is the one that stood out to me there. I'll keep banging that drum. And then on the Patrick has more touchdowns than Sutton. I think it's possible. I said that in a Mile High Sports roundtable, but I said it because I was like, just to be interesting. So I'm not saying Sutton for all these. I'll go Patrick. I think Sutton's a better he's better at attacking vertically. Like Patrick can do it, but he's not really going to win with speed. I think Sutton's got a little more juice if he's fully back from that ACL. And I think he'll fit Russ a little better with those tally more touchdowns with that kind of big play ability.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's possible. I think it could go either way. At the end of the day, I think it's that close for me. I don't think that. I mean, I for how much I want Sutton to come back and just be spectacular, amazing, all pro, like, version of himself, this more polished receiver that we saw 2 years ago for the explosiveness, if you could pair those two together. But it's a projection at the end of the day. So who really knows? I think Tim Patrick, I see what he is, and I feel very confident in what he is. Right. Zach, you mentioned the vertical threat. I think Tim Patrick is a pretty good vertical threat. I really do. I think he is. He's a height, and people, and I'm not saying you, Zach, and you've actually commented on this before, so I know not you, but people think Patrick is slow, and he's not slow. He's a really good athlete, especially going vertical. I think he's more than capable of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the answers, guys. Love the questions. Thanks again for submitting those. We want to move on over to at Frankie's Films. Frankie Abbott, friend of the show, asked what AFC team is the biggest threat to Denver winning a conference championship. Joey, you want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, for sure. I think the Chargers have a great team on paper. I really think that. And it's an AFC West, not just AFC team, but AFC West opponent. Justin Herbert still on that rookie deal. And this is something that, I mean, if you go back in my Twitter history before we traded for Russell Wilson, a big thing I was always talking about was before these young quarterbacks get their extensions, you can just see how their offseason moves, and they can just go out and get players, sign players, trade for players. And I mean, because that quarterback salary is such a hit at the end of the day that the rookie contract is that valuable. And you've seen that with the way the Chargers have built their team this year. They have a fantastic football team on paper. Now, it feels like we've said this a bunch with the Chargers, and they just have an injury bug out of this world through the years. But I don't know if that's something that you can just say. So I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think that their on paper team looks amazing.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs. They've proven it already. And I think the Bills are the best team in the AFC. So like if, that was the question, I'd say the Bills. But what team is the biggest threat to Denver? I think it's the Chiefs, because you're going to play them twice this year. They continue to be the Broncos boogeyman. I think there is a mental side of that rivalry at this point. And then I also think, again, just Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I've got a lot of faith in them. Yes, you're losing Tyreek Hill and swapping him out for Juju. And I think surface level, it's like, whoa, the Chiefs took a big step back. But I think they're repositioning themselves really nicely for a bit of maybe not offensive overhaul, but some offensive tweaking. And I trust Andy Reid's vision and Mahomes' talent to execute that. I think the Chargers are a really good team too, but man, the Chargers are always the offseason team, and we just haven't seen it come together yet. So I need to see it on the field before I give them more credit, even though they might be the paper champions.
I get that. It's just like, I don't know if that's something you can bank on. I don't know if it's just like they've had bad luck, but the reason I can't bank on is I can't point to anything where it's like, oh, this is the reason they look amazing in the offseason and don't look good in the regular
Brandon
season.
Staley might not be a good head coach. Like, he might be. Vic Lombardi, I think, is a bad offensive coordinator. I think that would be one thing. The right side of their offensive line, specifically right tackle, is still problematic. Like, I think they're good. And I'm not saying it's like the weird mystic element of the Chargers is why they're not going to do well. That's not why. We haven't seen it all come together for them. So for me to go from like non-playoff team to biggest threat in the AFC, I'm not ready for that leap yet. I think they're a very serious threat.
So where do you, I guess this is kind of off topic off of this question, but I'm interested now. So how do you stack up those three teams, or maybe you even throw the Raiders in there? How do you stack up those three AFC West teams there, with the Broncos included?
Man, I think I go Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos right now.
Okay.
I am kind of bullish on the Broncos though. I might I'd have to really think about. I have them really neck and neck. I
Yeah,
could rank
it's
them
tough.
any which way, really.
I think that's
But
all. It's hard to be mad at any four teams of the rankings. It's really hard for me, at least, because I could see these situations playing out where you could have even the Raiders at the top. I mean, they've made some offseason moves that have been really good, and I think Zach, you also think, maybe you agree with me. I think Derek Carr's a really underrated quarterback, and they've added weapons around him. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how the AFC West stacks out this offseason or this year. But man, it is going to be a bloodbath, and I'm excited for it. Every single AFC West game is going to be fun.
And happening twice for each of those teams. Like that's
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yeah.
And Zach took the words right out of my mouth. I think that's completely appropriate to also put in that mentality of if the Broncos defeat the Chiefs this season, then what the heck is going on, right? Like it needs to happen this year. I think that plays a lot into why that's going to be the toughest. The Bills are probably the most talented team. So I agree across the board there. Can't argue that. I know it's a kind of a cop-out answer, but Zach just put it really succinctly. So I appreciate that. You're welcome. Another compliment tonight. I am on a roll.
I know. I'm rolling in
it. I do want to get to the next question that might make Joey flinch a little bit, but Kyle over at Back in Blacker on the Twitter says, why won't the defense take a step back in 2022? Joey, why won't they?
Why won't they? I have to make the argument, why won't they? I will take the words out of my friend Zach Seeger's mouth here and just say, if I'm making the argument, if I am making that argument, it'll be because they are because the team is more receptive to a more player-friendly head coach. Now, if I'm taking the words out of my friend here, Zach Seeger's mouth. But
I'm surprised Joey didn't go with what his argument's been this whole time, because I was actually planning on stealing the words out of Joey's mouth, which is this team's going to hopefully be a lot healthier. That's going to be huge and have a much better pass rush, in theory. That along with, Fangio being swept out in the Evero thing that I've been talking about forever, I think will also have an impact. But you're going to have better pass rushing talent this year. I feel pretty confident about that. I don't know if it'll be great. It's got a pretty wide variance, but the fact I don't know, they'll be on the roster for 16 games, Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory, I think is nice. We only had Vaughn for 8. And then the depth is greatly improved. I just wrote on that today for a piece that'll publish tomorrow morning. The depth at edge is just much improved.
I will say at the edge position, there's a lot of question marks. Like there's a lot of guys that in theory sound amazing, right? But there are some question marks.
Joey, this is why won't they take a step back?
I know, but I have to comment on it or I'm lying here. There are a lot of questions at edge rusher right now. There are. Randy Gregory already hurt a little bit, which has been a concern for people all over Broncos country since the signing. Bradley Chubb hasn't looked like the same guy since he's been a rookie. And, I mean, Baron Browning hasn't played edge in the NFL yet. We're moving from inside linebacker to the edge. Like, there are a lot of questions. Then after those three, we're looking at Jonathan Cooper and Malik Reed, who I don't think anyone's just sitting here like over the moon. I don't think anyone's talking about either of those guys as starting caliber edge rushers. Oh, and Nick Benito, I guess. But also another question mark, right? Can he defend the run? Is he strong enough at the point of attack? Certain question marks like that. And he's a rookie. So these are all question marks about the edge group. I think they took some good shots to make sure that it's solidified, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that we're 100% good to go.
I think you have to look at it both ways, right? So there's a lot of question marks surrounding the defense and their ability to keep healthy, right? Obviously not relying on depth there, new coaching staff across the board. But why is that not being implemented when we talk about the offense? Or maybe it is. And maybe I just feel like sometimes it's a little bit more weighted towards the defense because Fangio, to his credit, ran a pretty solid gig there and had great concepts for what he wanted to run. It just wasn't the time or the place, right? So riddle me riddle me this, and I'm not trying to be start an argument, but why are the question marks tailored towards the defense and not towards the offense, where there's question marks on whether the quarterback is going to be up to snuff, or whether the wide receivers are going to be healthy enough or know how to handle that level of pressure, right? So there's a lot of question marks surrounding the bulk of the team. Why is it the defense that you feel so strongly about?
Yeah, I think because we're leaving a defensive mastermind of a head coach. That would be my take. And I also think that we just simply have more injury-prone players on our defense than we do offense. At the end of the day, I think that's simply what it is for me. That's the biggest thing. I mean, when you go down the roster, I mean, we have older players like Kareem Jackson who are questioning, can he fill in? Caden Stearns is a little bit of a question mark, rookie, but didn't really play that safety position that we're kind of projecting him to be in this next year. We talked about the edge rushers and all of their question marks. You know, I'm less concerned about this than I think the average Broncos fan, but a lot of people have question marks about the inside linebacker group. There's just different things there. I mean, Ronald Darby hasn't stayed healthy for a whole season, a lot, like ever. He did it once. There's just more question marks, in my opinion. I don't think it's a picking defense over offense thing. I simply just think that there's more questions. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. They took some good swings. I'll say that again. I think they took some good swings to solidify it. And if things go their way, it might look beautiful. I really do. There are just those question marks that, you know, linger in the back, and that I think I have to point out.
Offense relies heavily on one person. Defense doesn't.
Yeah,
and
that's
with
true.
offense, you've got Russell Wilson, and like even if you get bad Russell Wilson, that's huge. Overall, I think I agree with Bree though. Like I think you've got questions on both sides of the ball. I don't think it has to be a either or. You have questions on offense or questions on defense. I think there's questions everywhere for this team, but still a lot of reason for optimism.
No, I really like it. Joey, thank you for that. Frankie's in the chat saying that you're spitting out here. So spitting facts with Joey Richards.
No,
Blacker wants to know, are we not deeper on defense than offense? Do you got a lot of depth out there on the defense? Is it because they're a little too green?
I think the offense is super deep. Like I think the shallowest position on the team is inside linebacker. Like offense, I think you've got a really good starter at quarterback, really good backup at quarterback, a really good like scout team quarterback. At running back, you've got a good like two-headed monster, and then Mike Boone is a really good number 3. Like wide receivers really deep, tight end. Maybe you're worried about top end talent, but like I don't really have questions about the depth there. Tackle goes like 3 deep, maybe 4 if you're like a big Quinn Bailey guy. Guard goes 4 or 5 deep. Center's pretty shallow, I guess, to be fair, but I don't know. I think the whole offense is pretty deep.
On the same vein of that question, I want to jump over to RL Wisdom 44 over on Twitter. Asked, is the CB room depth enough outside of PS2 to compete for the AFC West crown?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, I mean, once you start going to those backup cornerback positions, it's tough to ever feel confident, 100% confident, and just be like, oh, we can slide a guy in there. I don't think you could do this for any 32 teams, really. I mean, maybe there's a couple. The Chargers assigned Bryce Callahan, great signing, and he's going to be what on paper looks like their 4th guy. But you're rarely going to be looking at your 4th corner and just be like, oh, yeah, he could definitely just start and be amazing for 16 games. You know, that's just not something that you ever are going to feel great in. He's a 4th corner for a reason. I think the Broncos, Michael Ojemudia, he's flashed enough to be that 4th corner, in my opinion. And, you know, we went out and drafted player. We did different things to make it happen. So I think the Broncos have done enough, as much as any other team hoping to compete has done. So that's just where I would say. I don't feel confident saying that any of these backup players could just slide in and start on the outside right away, and we should just all feel comfortable with it. But, I mean, who can? That's what I would say there.
Yeah, what cornerback room You remove the top guy from and you feel confident about them going up against Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes 4 games out of the season. And then the Derek Carr to Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow thing for 2 more. I don't think so. Yeah, like outside of PS2, is it deep enough? Like if heaven forbid PS2 was to go out for the whole season, that would severely hurt the Broncos' chances. But that I think goes for a lot of teams around the league. Like if you take one of their 5 most valuable players and a guy who could potentially take the leap towards superstardom, and if he does, that'll be a huge boost towards the Broncos' playoff and championship aspirations. If you're removing that guy from the equation entirely, goodness, I'm having a stroke. That would be bad. However, I think if you look at the cornerback room as a whole, it's plenty deep enough to compete. Like this is a really one of the deeper rooms I think in the league. Just about every team in the league is desperate for another corner. And the Broncos have PS2 and Ronald Darby, which I think is a really nice outside tandem. Darby does not get enough love, by the way.
Underrated.
Last season, when teams were in 3-by-1 alignments, it was Darby over there on an island more often than not PS2. And he did a great job. So he absolutely deserves more love from Broncos country. Jolene asked the question, who's going to be cornerback 2, Darby or Ojemudia? Darby, and I don't even think it's a competition. K1's a really nice nickel. And then Ojemudia is a number 4. Like if he's the version of Ojemudia we saw last season during training camp and against the Chiefs, that's maybe the best number 4 corner in the league. I don't know if he can do that consistently, but I mean, that's pretty exciting. Damari Mathis was one of my favorite draft picks of theirs. Yes, to Joey's point, maybe you don't trust that guy outside right away, but I think he's a really nice number 5 corner, especially if you look around the league at what other teams' cornerback rooms look like. And then, there's a drop off to number 6, but the fact you don't experience that drop off until the very end of your corner room, I think is a testament to how talented and deep the Broncos cornerbacks are.
Zach, I'm wondering, are there any, since you've been there, you've seen these players, has there been any takeaways from Mathis thus far? Has he shined at all? Has there been anything that caught your eye or no?
There hasn't been a Mathis moment, honestly. Neither good nor bad. I think a rookie in OTAs.
Head spinning, right?
Just being honest. Like I haven't seen him gotten beat. Maybe if you look through my live Twitter thread, I think there was maybe like a PBU where he had like a play. One guy that's stood out, in the competition there at the very back end of the roster is Donnie Lewis Jr. He's had a couple practices where he's had like an interception, and I think he's had another where he's had like 2 interceptions in one practice, and competing for it's OTA. So like that really isn't going to move the needle much, but of those guys at the back end, I think he's one that stood out.
You see Bassey and Hicks then ending up on the practice squad or possibly not making the cut.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be in the mix too. I don't think like what Donnie Lewis did in OT hurt Bassey and Hicks all that much. I think those are the 3 I'm circling for like who's going to be cornerback 6. Kind of like wide receiver. It's like I feel pretty good about who the first 5 roster spots are, but who's going to be that 6th and maybe that 7th guy. Those are I'd say the big 3 names I'm circling for that one.
Awesome. I love this next question because I just cannot wait to cover it. One Blazing Saddle asks, who do you think would have the better stat line, yards, touchdowns, less fumbles if the Broncos split playing time in half at running back? Whoever wants to jump into that first, although I have a pretty, it's not even a hot take. I'll let one of you take it. I'm going to go Joey. Start us off on this. The running back split reps, half and half. Who comes out on top in each stat?
Okay, yards, I'm going to go Javonte Williams. I just think he's the more explosive player. I think that once he's in open field, I'm going to take this as all-purpose yards too, right? So I think Javonte Williams is amazing. in that area. I think he's the more explosive player. I think he has the bigger chance of ripping off bigger gains, stuff like that. I think touchdowns, I'm still going to go Melvin Gordon if they split 50-50. I do. I think that ball carrier vision is such a big thing in the red zone. You need to be able to read those gaps. See, because there's a lot of the time there's a free man in the red zone. There just is. You don't have enough blockers to take on everybody in a goal line situation. And I would take Melvin Gordon there. Less fumbles, Javonte Williams. Melvin Gordon has a history of fumbles. Javonte Williams doesn't really. So I would go that area. Zach, do you differ at all there?
Who did you say for touchdowns?
I said Melvin Gordon.
Okay, so here's my thing. People talk about Melvin Gordon as this guy who I don't know, is this magical touchdown scorer. He's always gotten throughout his career. You know why he scores so many touchdowns? Because he always gets handed the ball near the end zone. It's not like he's got some magnets in his shoes that are attracted to the paint on the field. And I know you're not saying this, Joey, but I've seen it too much where it's like, oh, Melvin Gordon's the touchdown guy.
I have a reason though.
No, he gets handed the ball. I know you do.
But he's still scoring the touchdowns.
Because he gets handed the ball. If we're talking half and half, if you give Javonte Williams as many carries inside the 5 as Melvin Gordon, I think he scores double the touchdowns.
I'm saying they had the same rushing attempts.
32-year-old Melvin Gordon and 24-year-old Javonte Williams, who is a bear to bring down in short yardage situations.
Frankie's right.
Give me Javonte Williams. Maybe OCs do, but you know what OCs don't like? Old running backs that have lost half a step.
I don't know. So sometimes they do. I've seen NFL teams just pay old running backs. Like it's crazy.
It's true.
It's wild out here.
But they shouldn't. And give me Javonte Williams. He's the better running back right now.
Okay, they shouldn't. One, we don't know that because last year's statistics state that they had the same rushing attempts. They fumbled the ball about the same clip, had about the same amount of yards, and Melvin Gordon was killing it with the touchdowns. Okay, so he got the ball within the red zone, within 5 yards more often. But yeah, he's still scoring the touchdowns. If you ran that for every other single player, you're going to discount how they play because when they were given the ball, it's interesting to me.
So here's my reasoning.
He plays. It's just about where he's given the ball.
Which one of the running backs? Zach, which one of the running backs here were stuffed at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage at a higher clip? It would be Javonte Williams, correct? Melvin Gordon consistently had
picking up extra yards. Who's better at
for sure? But Melvin Gordon consistently had a higher 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yard gains than Javonte. Javonte was a great, fantastic at ripping off these big gains where he would break 6 tackles. He would be amazing, right? But if we're talking about ball carrier vision, and I'll repeat this, in the red zone, man, you're not always considering everybody. You're going to have a free guy a lot of the time. And I think that ball carrier vision, which I think we both agree here, is something that Melvin Gordon is better than Javonte Williams at this point in their career is at. Melvin Gordon is going to have a higher success in the red zone. If it's coming down to a one-on-one play, right? If it's a one-on-one, I have to beat my one man, I'll take Javonte Williams. But I think Melvin Gordon has a better chance of going untouched in the end zone. I really think that. I think Melvin Gordon has a better chance at picking up that 1 yard gain that you need to punch in a touchdown.
Le'Veon Bell has the best vision of any running back over the past decade, maybe 2, maybe more than that. Vision's incredible. But once he lost a step, it didn't matter. And he was a hell of a lot more talented than Melvin Gordon.
Has Melvin Gordon lost a step? Is that what you're saying?
Last year, so this year the problem is compounded even more. Last year, he was he was the oldest of the NFL's 33 most productive running backs. I don't know where the cliff is. If this is a Thelma and Louise situation on a foggy night. I don't know where the cliff is, but I know it's up ahead and we could drop off at any point. Bree just went over the cliff. It's foggy out here. We don't know where they are. You could go over at any moment. So that's what I'm talking about with Melvin Gordon. See, Bree was here 1 minute, and then the next second she's gone.
No, Zach, that was just how little sense you were making. Bree had to just end her whole camera there for a second.
I'm
100% right on that. I'm 100%
you can't just
claim. We're keeping track of this. and we're going to see touchdowns at the end of the season. Who has more touchdowns? It's going to be Javonte.
Rich says, sorry, Zach,
100%.
age does not always equal loss of speed. It's like saying you're going to lose your hair at 30. Hey, thanks, Rich. Appreciate the feedback. I just think it's pretty crazy that you're going to go
age
out there.
does equal loss of speed. It does. You get slower
You said
with
he
age.
had fresh
Yes, you
legs
do.
at
I'm
OTAs.
sorry.
You're telling me
Are you eating
You did. You're contradicting you a little bit.
You're so contradicting yourself right now. I am sick. I had to turn my camera off because I was vomiting.
Since when did we start valuing OTA performances from running backs? Yeah, his legs looked fresh, but OTA running back. Come on, let's keep everything in perspective here.
Getting out of here. Anybody have any
I'd tuck my
remarks?
tail and run too.
Goodness.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, I'm mad. All right. RO Wisdom 44 is back with us again. Is Denver's depth at inside linebacker good enough? If not, could they resign Alexander Johnson? Guys, I've been wondering this since the preseason is right around the corner. Training camp is 9 days away. No word on Alexander Johnson. I think he was great for the team last season, coming back as a veteran presence for this team upcoming. I don't know if it has a chance to happen, although the depth there would be nice, considering that is a question mark. How do you guys feel about that? And Zach, since I'm mad at you, Joey, go ahead.
I think it's fine. I'm not that. I mean, if last year taught me something, it was like, okay, the Broncos got really beat up at inside linebacker, and they got destroyed when they did. But how simple was it to change? Like, all they did was trade a 7th round pick for a linebacker, and everything went back to normal.
And trade for Jonas Griffith preseason for like what did they get him for? Like a 6th or a 5th?
Yeah, it was something like that.
You don't want to trade 2 day 3 picks to,
and then they fixed their entire linebacking corp. It was never really that big of an issue. Like, sure, it was a hit losing Josie Jewell. It was a hit losing the inside linebackers that they had, but when you saw how easy it was to go out there and just attain guys that just played, like, we're talking about we literally traded for a linebacker, played him the next week, and he was good to go. And our linebacker core wasn't that huge of an issue after that. So I don't think that the linebackers are that big of an issue. I just don't. I don't. Zach, what's your opinion?
Yeah. Wow. Sorry. Frankie's comment's really funny. For our audio listeners, Frankie says, so help me God if I watch this team sign some 30-something linebacker while Browning practices cross drops, I'll lose it. I think that's fair.
I just want you to know your age.
The football age kind of matters. I mean, the data's there. Browning. Okay, so here's my thing with linebacker depth. It's very concerning to me.
Really?
To Joey's point, it should be fixable in theory, but man, you're going to have 4, maybe 5 of these guys rostered if you look at how many they had rostered last year. And there are like 2 good ones. And then like Alex Singleton, if he has to start a couple games, he's not going to be even as good as like Kenny Young was. It's going to be a little tough if he has to start some time for you. And then after him, it drops off another very, very steep cliff. And again, all that's assuming Jonas Griffith can do what we saw for 3 games over the course of 17. Like, we always talk about, being uncertain with Ojemudia and what's he going to be. He played like 1 less game. I think the snaps are quite a bit different, but he played like 1 less game than Jonas Griffith, or started 1 less game than Jonas Griffith last year. I don't know if we can bank on that certainty too. And then Josie Jewell, the starter, is coming off a season-ending injury. You've got like 3, I think, NFL caliber linebackers, and then like roster caliber linebackers. And then those last 2 spots, or that last spot, is going to, I don't know, it's not going to be great. And I think those 3 rosterable guys still have good question marks.
So I guess my question would be like, I don't think it's possible to build the perfect team. And if there was a position that you would be most concerned about, it would be on that defense. It would be inside linebacker. So
totally, and it's fine. It's a sacrifice you're willing to make. But what if I told you don't have to be so concerned about it, Joey? Because the big problem is you don't have anyone outside of Jonas Griffith that, can be a good off-ball linebacker, match up in coverage and all that. Quan Alexander is still on the open market, played solid for the Saints last year. Probably could get him for pretty cheap just because this Wisdom asked about Alexander Johnson. I don't think you'd sign him because I think he's kind of in the same vein as Singleton and Jewell. Quan Alexander is the backup to Browning, maybe even ahead of Singleton on the depth chart. Again, it all depends what you need. That fits pretty well. For Broncos fans that aren't familiar, I actually did some research ahead of time. He's like 8.5 RAS guy. And all that, so that means he's an 85th percentile athlete at linebacker. And all the movement stuff graded really well in, and explosiveness graded really well in. Size, not so much. So that's why pairing him with a Singleton or pairing him with a Jewell in case of injury is an appealing option. I think he's like the Broncos' Kenny Young, and I would like them to sign him preseason because right now I think you're putting yourself in a position where you could be relying a lot on Kadofi Wright.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think it's that concerning. I think that's just kind of where I am. I mean, if they want to go out and sign a guy that they feel more comfortable with, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Sorry. No, I saw a comment. I'm sorry, Richie. Richie's commenting about Singleton. I disagree. I saw, I don't know, watching Singleton Eagles tape last year was depressing for me. He's the kind of linebacker that drives me crazy. I'm sorry. It wasn't my favorite.
You know what? You're able to have all of your opinions, Zach, and I know you'll let us know about them. Although I will agree with you there.
Damn, that was shady as fuck.
Beautiful work.
I do want to jump to the next question. Best Kid Wilkins over on the Twitter asks, what can we expect from Coach Hackett's offensive scheme this season? Take it away.
Zach, this is yours.
I think, honestly, I'm not too hung up on who the OC for the team is because we've seen a ton of OCs in Seattle and we haven't seen a lot of like offensive changes. I think it's going to be the Russell Wilson offense, which is going to be a lot of nice deep shots, a lot of play action, a lot of attacking the boundary, not so much attacking the short to intermediate middle of the field. And the way Russell Wilson attacks is going to open up the run game a good bit. And you're going to see light boxes and probably a lot of, I think it's going to be a huge season for Javonte Williams kind of being like Russell Wilson's new age Marshawn Lynch. Which is why it's so you guys would be Pete Carroll and throwing the ball on the 1 yard line.
How dare you? How dare you?
Anyway, sorry, I'm trying to answer a question, Bree.
Don't ever compare me to Pete
I think it's going to be the Russell Wilson offense, long story short.
I get so many different comps a day. People say I look like all these different people. Zach just threw out the Pete Carroll comp out there. That's insane. Yeah, I don't know. Bree, what do you think about this one?
I still can't believe he called me Pete Carroll. Although, thank you. Shout out to Pete Carroll for that Super Bowl win. Really appreciate it. What's interesting, Zach, with saying that Javonte Williams could, it was lovely knowing you. It sure was. I didn't even click that one. My hands are over here. Or it's magic. You don't know. Javonte Williams will have a big year. I also believe Melvin Gordon will have a big year. This offense is going to be something completely different than we've seen in the past. And specifically, like Zach said, it's because it's Russell Wilson's offense. I'm interested to see how he commands that. As far as Hackett goes, I know that they're going to put the players in the best position to succeed, which is much outside of what Pat Shurmur did with the offense last season. You're not going to see a whole lot of trying to cram square pegs into round holes, which I'm most excited about. Should run, if we're talking about theories and on paper, should run quite well. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, see exactly how they take these players and elevate them, which is why I think the pieces that they've retained, specifically bringing back Gordon, were for a reason. Other than that, I'm still aghast at what has transpired on this episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Joey, do you have anything for it?
Yeah, so I don't know what we should expect. I think at the end of the day, like there was that one guy, I forget who it was. Someone can remind me, but he had to report that the Broncos were building their offense
Oh, that
around
was a
Russell
funny.
Wilson.
That was a funny
Which was insane. Like, dude, we didn't know this already. Yeah, we traded everything for him. Like, I'm sure we will build our offense around Russell Wilson. Yeah, of course. I think it's going to be the Russell Wilson offense. I think the Broncos are going to play into what he wants to run, as they should. He's their quarterback, and they traded everything to get him. You better play into his strengths. So that's, I think, the Broncos' direction they will go, and I think that's the smartest direction they can go. Now, I think, of course, Hackett will have his influences. I think the zone block scheme, that outside zone is going to be a big thing, certain things like that. But at the end of the day, Russell Wilson will be running the show.
With question marks intact. Or I think just recently on Instagram, he put out "Fourth is coming." I think that's a little jinxy to me, but I sure hope so. And I'm on board. So let's ride. I said it without laughing that time. Sleepy Kev Sleepy Kev 5. Kevin asks, do you think that Nick Bonito will get to start a game at some point in 2022?
I do not. That's my take. I don't think so. I think that he's going to be a guy that's going to come in for pass rush situations, and he may be a productive pass rusher. I don't know, which makes him extremely valuable. If he comes into the game in areas where you need him to get after the quarterback, I think he could be extremely valuable there, and that's the way I would play it. Now, I think we have a plethora of different guys we could throw in and feel more comfortable with and run situations or your more questionable situations like that. Zach, I'm curious if you have a different opinion on Bonito than I do.
I kind of do, just because, okay, this is the kind of question that I find really, really interesting, because there's multiple paths to it. Like, I agree. I don't think he's going to be pulling a coup on the depth chart. Like, I don't think he can do enough climbing there. I do think I have him as that number 4 guy. Maybe he'll be like 5 behind Cooper and just a pass rushing specialist. But if he can beat out Cooper, I think that's the big one. And Brown, it'll be kind of that mob. But if he can get into that number 4 spot, both starters have fairly serious injury questions. And you might be forced to have to turn to Bonito and just kind of deal with his run deficiencies. And I think you'd still get a heavy dose of Cooper, even if that was the case, especially on, early rundowns. But like, who gets listed as the starter or who gets played more snaps? If an injury happens to Gregory and Chubb, which is totally reasonable considering Chubb has been injured 2 of the 4 seasons in his career, and Gregory has never played more than 550 snaps in a season, Bonito could very easily start. I think it's like 60-40, 70-30 to no, he won't. But I don't think it's like a flat out no.
Yeah.
Can
I throw this out here real quick? I want to say that the starter backup thing a lot of the time is just not, it's kind of stupid. I think a lot of the time we all think of starters as the guy that play on first down, when that's really not even like, there's at so
Snap
many different.
counts.
Yeah, it's really about snap counts and what role you fill for a specific down or for a specific situation. You may be the starter in a situation, right? That's an important thing. It's not always about who's in there on 1st and 10. There's a lot more that goes into it, and a lot more that's just really important. You have niche players all throughout your roster.
Yeah, I agree.
Will it represent George Payton's, I guess, lineage here, tutelage, if you will, for the Denver Broncos in being able to draft in a really unique and efficient way? You saw rookies last season step up due to injury. And as you kind of alluded to, there's a question mark there with whether or not Bonito would get that nod, is if there was injury concerns or if something unfortunate had happened. It'll be really interesting to see if George Payton knocked it out of the park again this season. If a rookie like Bonito, who was drafted, first for the Broncos, is whether or not that shakes out the same way. Now, it's obviously asking lightning to strike twice and pretty ferociously, but I think that until it's been proven wrong, there could be the propensity for him to be able to step in and play, given the need, I guess. And hopefully we won't need to see that due to injuries for any reason. So, I did want to hop to the next question. Elsa the Lion 13 over on Twitter said and asked, what do you want to see, or sorry, who do you want to see the Broncos add? Are there any remaining players out there that you feel the Broncos should scoop up, either, during training camp, prior to preseason, before the regular season? Is anybody sitting out there that you think they haven't pursued enough?
I think that if the Broncos wanted to add a player, they would have probably have added him by now. I think that at this point, I really think that if they go out and sign like a guy that we all know, like a big name person, right, it's going to be because of injury. And that's just where I kind of stand right now. Zach, is there a guy? You kind of mentioned Quan Alexander earlier.
Quan would be my guy. Just like I do think when you look over the actually, I've got another one.
You have a couple.
When you look over this roster, there are two big places, and nickel corner would be like a third one, kind of on the periphery. But there's two places where I go, yikes, kind of about what's happening as starter and what's happening in terms of depth, and that's center and that's inside linebacker. Which, granted, are not like the most important positions, but this team is trying to win a Super Bowl right now. The Russell Wilson contract extension is coming next off season. You are trying to win. And I know probably most people don't view the Broncos as their number one Super Bowl favorites. That aside, and all of us would probably be happy with like a divisional playoff run, but they are trying to win right now. So why, when you have this glaring kind of hole at inside linebacker, a glaring hole at center, and enough cap space for this year to sign a couple cheap deals, why not add a JC Treader to center? Why not add a Quan Alexander? And it's just like you can I forget who said it. I think it might have been Robert Mays. But it's like there's different levels of free agency and what you're trying to do in terms of team building by signing veterans. And when you're at a certain level of contender, you are signing these contracts as contingencies, just to have like extra contingencies. So, hey, something bad goes on at cornerback, we know we have Michael Ojemudia who can step up, or whatever. There's certain positions where, safety, we know we can have Caden Stearns or Kareem Jackson step up, or running back, you've got Melvin Gordon. You've got contingencies at a lot of positions. You don't have them at linebacker. You don't have them at center. You can just sign these guys for nice and cheap. JC Treader's played in this wide zone offense before, and like, let's go. Or Everson Griffin. That's a fun one from Frankie.
Zach, I have a question for you, and I'm just playing antagonist right now, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I think why don't you think, is there a reason why these guys haven't signed? Like, do you think that maybe there's something that we don't know, or maybe they're asking for too much, or there's a situation?
Why?
Like, these are not bad players, so why aren't they on an NFL roster yet?
I think it's becoming more and more vote to be like, why do I want to be on a team and do all the annoying things in May and June when I can sign in July?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think is more common. I think these guys get signed. I think JC Treader is on an NFL roster this year. I think Quan Alexander is on an NFL roster this year. To your point, they're too good, and there aren't like obviously like arrest records or like anything that's obviously concerning, or a big injury that is limiting them this offseason.
Yeah.
They're past their prime, but they're going to be on NFL teams this season, and the Broncos, I think, would be wise to make them members of their team.
Can I also make this point real quick? I think NFL teams, and I really believe this, I think there's some NFL teams that literally just don't know what they're doing sometimes. Like, I honestly believe that. I think there's
Raiders.
What do you say?
The Raiders.
I think there's a plethora of NFL teams every single offseason that make moves that are just concerning, and everyone from a mile away can see that this isn't going to work out. Yet everyone on Twitter will sit there and tell you they know better than you, blah, 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 blah. But, I mean, a lot of the time it doesn't work out. I remember, man, how everyone from a mile away saw that Jamal Adams trade, except for like one person on Twitter I saw. knew that Jamal Adams trade wasn't going to work out. Yet they made it. Yet they made it. And there was going to be people telling you that the NFL teams know what they're doing and you're wrong and don't they know more, but it's just part of the NFL.
Cal's commentary is killing me right now.
It's good. Cal's warning Joey that Big Brother's coming for him. For our audio listeners, shout out to Cal.
Well, I hope they're listening. I did want to grab another comment from the chat. Grandizer12, who's tuning in over here while he's moderating another show. That's commitment. We appreciate it here. Question to the panel. Choose one Broncos player that this year is a prove it year. I heard Russell Wilson's name thrown out there. Your takes. I have to say, I agree with you 100%. For me, it's Russell Wilson. I stated on a previous episode that I think he has the most pressure squarely on his shoulders this season. And I think that also applies to it being a prove it year because it is also a contract year and you're going to have to pay him next year. So how many times in like 60 seconds can I say the word year? Not sure. Let's keep going. I think that absolutely everyone in Broncos country, whether they're completely bought in and they're ready to ride or not, thinks that Russell Wilson has to step it up a bit in order to I don't know what you're laughing at over there.
Ready to ride or not?
Let's ride. I don't know what you're laughing about. It's not funny. Broncos country, let's ride. I hate myself. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, I think McTelvin Najim has the most to prove. I think it's put up or shut up this year. I really do think that. He was a guy that came in and everyone thought he was going to be a little bit of a project, but now we're entering year 3. It really is like, hey, man, you have to produce this year. You have to earn your spot. You need to be part of the rotation and be productive, a part of the rotation. Obviously, a guy that came in a little I thought artificial weight wasn't very great at the point of attack, but had a lot of athleticism, changing from an edge position to that interior defensive line position. But, man, you can only wait so long, and we're entering year 3. So that's my guy.
I mean, you guys both missed the layup. It's Jerry Jeudy. This is it for him, man. Like, you could have had the excuses in the past. You had the excuses in the past. Offensive play caller's not good. The quarterback's not good. Man, now it's time. You look at the other guys in his draft class, most of them, like Jalen Reagor being the one that isn't, most of them are outperforming him at this point. Not all those guys have good quarterbacks. Not all those guys have good play callers. Now he hypothetically has a good play caller and a good quarterback. If he can't piece it together this year, and I'm not saying he won't, but if he can't, my man's run out of excuses at this point, and it's not going to be looking good. Earlier, we were talking about how he's pretty penciled into that wide receiver 3 spot. If he has a rough year this year, no chances he penciled into a starting job next year. He's not going to have that same luxury. On the flip side, if he finally does come to life and has a 1,000-yard season, everyone's going to be going, look, he was good. It was just the quarterback. It was just the play caller. I think he has the biggest make or break.
So what's like my biggest question here, what's like an average season for Jeudy this next year? What's something that you would be like, okay, it's not make or break. Like, he's satisfied enough, like just enough. Can you give me like a yards or something like that?
Man, ballpark, like,
because you have to think
800 yards, 70 catches, 50 touchdowns. That's what it should be, dude. Because top 15 pick. You've got Russell Wilson. If we're talking about him as a potential number 2, I think it's make or break for him.
It's true, but
if he has
even
another
less than that,
500-yard season, that's what he was doing with Drew Lock.
But we're already projecting him as wide receiver 3, right? So, like, what's your average wide receiver 3? What's your average wide receiver 3 numbers? 900 yards for your third wide receiver would be amazing. Like, that would be.
I think him being wide receiver 3 is frankly a bit of a disappointment. I'm projecting him as wide receiver 3 because I don't have a ton of faith in him. I think if you're the Broncos, you would like to see him being wide receiver 2. Patrick and Sutton's skill sets, I think they can exist together and both be really good, but their skill sets are a little redundant. I think in a perfect world, if you're the Broncos, it's Jeudy and Sutton, or Jeudy and Patrick is your Batman and Robin.
It's true, but it just feels like the third receiver, no matter who it's going to be, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, we're all going to sit there and be like, dang, that's a disappointment just because there's not enough footballs to go around. Like that third receiver, he's not going to get 900 yards more than likely.
I get that, but
and we're all going to be sitting there talking about that's not good enough. When they're really in the reality, the issue is that there's not enough footballs to go around.
I think it's different things. Patrick's proven it. If he comes out next season and is wide receiver 3 and has like 600 yards or whatever, it's going to be like, oh, okay, Jeudy finally blossomed and there weren't enough footballs to go around. If Jeudy continues to be in a minimized role, despite now having the quarterback, now having the play caller, it's time to go, maybe it's a Jeudy thing. And that doesn't mean he's a bust and has to be out of the league. But I think there's still a lot of people clinging to the idea that he could be a star receiver in the league, or at least a very, very, very good receiver. If he isn't that this year, what is the excuse? Like, yeah, maybe he's buried on the depth chart. Very, very good receivers don't just get buried on the depth chart.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, but it's just like, I just sang Tim Patrick's praises, right? Earlier in this podcast, I sang Tim Patrick's praises. I said he could be the number one receiver on this team. He really could. He could end up being the number one receiver on this team. You made the argument that Cortland Sutton could be the number one receiver on this team. I don't think any of us sat here and were like, Jerry Jeudy could be the number one. So it naturally that would go 1, 2, 3. And I think that's more of just us talking about how talented you think that Cortland Sutton's going to come in and be this, wide receiver 1. I think that Tim Patrick could also be, solid, really, really good wide receiver 2. I think that Jerry Jeudy could come into the season and also be wide receiver 2, but the numbers may just not reflect it.
And I don't think it's all about stats. Like, I don't think Hunter Renfrow is putting up gaudy numbers in Las Vegas, but it's like, that's a good fucking football player.
Yeah.
I don't think Jeudy has proved, like, I know he's a good route runner. I don't know if he's a really good NFL football player. And I think stats aside, he can prove that this season.
No, I agree. I just know that it's going to end up coming to that. Like, that's going to be the narrative.
For some, but that's why people need to come to Let's Talk Broncos.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. You guys handled that well. I didn't even have to take out the gavel. You both make great points, and I think that we should see how that shakes out. I do want to just do one last rapid fire, just real quickly. Uganda's Joy 01, that's Jolene, over on Twitter. What will be your favorite position battle to watch? Joey, go first.
Okay, I think that it's obviously going to be offensive line for me. I think every position but that left tackle is going to be insane. Like, I don't know, from center to right tackle to left guard, what's going to happen there. You have a bunch of interchangeable pieces, guys that could play different positions. I'm just really interested to see how it all shakes out and how the coaching staff views it. Like, maybe Calvin Anderson doesn't exactly win the right tackle job, but Billy Turner, they feel more comfortable with, than the other guard. There's different things that could happen there that I'm just really interested to see it play out. And I'm excited to go to training camp and actually see it. Zach, do you have one?
It's a good choice. It's not one of my top 2, though. I've got these 2 like neck and neck. The safety thing, I'm so interested to watch. The Caden Stearns versus Kareem Jackson battle. I've been talking about it for months. I'm so intrigued to see which way that goes. And then the other big one for me is that third edge rushing job. Not so much because I'm like curious who's going to win it. Like that's certainly part of it, but mainly, can Baron Browning earn that job? I think, you're taking a starting linebacker off the field. For him to be an edge rusher, you'd hope he could at least be your top rotational edge rusher. So that's something can he earn that role? Or is he going to get buried? Because if he's buried, it's like, man, we just took a good starter off the field for him to get buried. I understand edge rusher is a more valuable position, but a starter is a more valuable player than a backup, generally speaking. So I'm curious. I'm really curious to see how that works out and to really get a look at Baron Browning at edge, because that's something we can't really analyze during OTAs and minicamp where they're just tapping each other.
So Zach just named all of them. We're just going to go with all of them.
I said 2.
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I had to be really nice, and then I had to be feisty. And now I'm back to being nice. It's like a
Honestly,
Sour
I
Patch Kid
shouldn't.
sandwich.
I
You left
shouldn't
Bree with
snap like that.
quarterback. She's like, I don't know. If Bree wanted the answer here, she's like, I don't know. This
Actually,
Josh
I'm
Johnson,
gonna be
Russell
watching
Wilson battle.
Seattle's QB competition is the one I'm really gonna be tracking. That's stupid. That was a loaded question.
Counting interceptions, training camp interceptions.
Ooh, I'm gonna miss it so much, y'all. Last training camp was so much fun. I couldn't get enough of it. But what I am looking forward to is seeing how the Caden Stearns safety saga just goes on. I'm really excited to watch that with the both of you. I know Zach will be in his ivory tower somewhere looking down upon us, but Joey and I will be out on the berm. So if you're out there, you can come say hello. Say it just like that. Say hello.
I'll be out there with so much sunscreen. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, we don't want Joey to burn. Although I brought sunscreen for you before and you still haven't put it on. So let's just be real here. Joey will be sunburnt. I also, and now I'm completely off track. I had a really great answer for this. And now it's gone. Yeah, we're going to go safety. And then, I obviously want to see how Montreal Washington shakes out in the wide receivers. I'm a big fan of him as a person and an athlete, and I'm really excited to see how he does out there and see kind of how the wide receivers shake out. There's a lot of them, much like there was last cycle. I know we were really high on some that didn't seem to work out. I'm really have high hopes for Montreal Washington, rooting for him big time. So I can't wait to see him out there. And cheer him on, because I am going to put on my fan hat for that. I do want to have the both of you tell everyone where they can find all of your great work.
Yeah. Everyone go follow me at JR Drafts. Find my writing at Mile High Sports. Those are my two big things. Rich just asked, Joey, do you own a safari hat? No, but I should. And yeah, that's my wrap up there. Zach, where can they find your amazing work?
Yeah. Mile High Sports got tons of articles out, like one coming out every day. This week is going to have a ton of columns. There are some questions in this mailbag that we weren't able to get to that I'm going to be writing about. I'm going to be writing about all these questions. So, if you missed some of this, definitely go back and listen to the episode, but can read the article too if you want to, tune out Bree and Joey and just get unfiltered Zach content. I'll have an article answering all these questions. And then I'm looking at ranking all the defensive position groups. I ranked the offensive position groups, and just tons of good columns coming out. So look over at milehighsports.com.
I'm just over here like, fuck me. Why does he say fuck me? Like, what did I do?
I don't think I said fuck you guys. I said tune it out. Tune out the noise.
Basically the same thing. And if you want to tune me out, that's too darn bad. You can find me on Mondays and Wednesdays with the Let's Talk Broncos crew, on Tuesdays with MHRT on the 5280 podcast. On Thursdays, you can listen to me on 98.1 FM with the Fan Cave. All over Mile High Sports. Download the app if you haven't already. You can catch everything live. You can read all the articles. You can see all of Joey and Zach's excellent work over there. And then you can just listen to me, because you may want to tune me out. It's just not happening anytime soon. It's been a great show tonight with everybody. I see so many people in the chat. I can't. So much for United in Orange. Just kidding. LOL. That's hilarious. Thank you, Grandizer, for still being here and cheering us on. We're united on some fronts, and then we go do some team building on the weekends, and it rips it completely apart. But that's all right. We'll be back here again on Wednesday, possibly with a special guest. We can't wait to talk more Broncos with you. So go ahead and join us again, and we'll see you soon, as always.